Hi friends, I'm Julia, and today we're going to do a little bit of GMAT reading comp practice. This video's focus will be reading comp detail questions. Detail questions are often viewed as fairly simple and straightforward, so I have included 3 potential examples of questions ranging from the most scan and find friendly to more challenging. Let's get started. Heads up, this passage is a little on the dense side because I wanted to have plenty of details to question you about. So, be forewarned, let's get started. The basic unit of all living organisms, the cell, contains numerous specialized structures that work in concert to maintain life. At the heart of every eukaryotic cell lies the nucleus, which houses genetic material and serves as the cell's control center. This structure is surrounded by a double membrane nuclear envelope, perforated with nuclear pores that regulate the passage of molecules between the nucleus and the cytoplasm. Within the nucleus, DNA is organized into chromosomes, which contain the instructions necessary for protein synthesis and cellular function. This first paragraph introduces the cell as the basic building block of all living organisms, and it talks about the layout of a eukaryotic cell and its control center, the nucleus. The cell's protein manufacturing centers, called ribosomes, can be found both free-floating in the cytoplasm and attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum. These microscopic machines follow the genetic instructions from the nucleus to assemble amino acids into proteins. The RER works in conjunction with the Golgi apparatus, which modifies and packages these newly created proteins for distribution throughout the cell or for secretion. Meanwhile, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, SER, specializes in lipid synthesis and detoxification of harmful substances. So this second paragraph talks a bit about the cell's protein synthesis team and their process, and it also discusses the different roles played by the rough and smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Perhaps the most remarkable cellular structures are mitochondria, often called the powerhouses of the cell. These organelles contain their own DNA and are believed to have originated as independent bacteria that were incorporated into early cells through endosymbiosis. Mitochondria generate most of the cell's supply of adenosine triphosphate, ATP, the molecule that provides energy for cellular processes. Interestingly, the number of mitochondria in a cell varies depending on the cell's energy requirements, with muscle cells containing thousands, while skin cells may have only a few hundred. This last paragraph, all about mitochondria, the cell's powerhouse, and how they generate energy. The overall point of the passage is to discuss eukaryotic cells, their various components, and the roles they each play in the cell's overall function. It's fairly informative in style instead of a more opinionated or persuasive writing style, so that's good to notice as well. Let's look at some questions. According to the passage, what is the primary function of mitochondria in the cell? Well, we know that mitochondria are discussed in this third paragraph, so let's find the relevant sentences. Perhaps the most remarkable cellular structures are mitochondria, often called the powerhouses of the cell. These organelles contain their own DNA and are believed to have originated as independent bacteria that were incorporated into early cells through endosymbiosis. Mitochondria generate most of the cell's supply of adenosine triphosphate, the molecule that provides energy for cellular processes. So, of these options, I think the obvious choice is C, energy production. Let's look at a slightly trickier question. According to the passage, which of the following structures work together in the process of protein production and distribution? We know from our recap that the second paragraph is all about protein production and distribution. So let's look through there. The cell's manufacturing centers, called ribosomes, can be found both free-floating in the cytoplasm and attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum. These microscopic machines, the ribosomes, follow the genetic instructions from the nucleus to assemble amino acids into proteins. The RER works in conjunction with the Golgi apparatus, which modifies and packages these newly created proteins for distribution throughout the cell or for secretion. Meanwhile, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum specializes in lipid synthesis and detoxification. So we don't need the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, just the ribosomes, the RER, and the Golgi apparatus, which we can see is answer D. This one does require reviewing most of the second paragraph, because if you're not careful, you might select choice B and miss the RER. Perfect. This will be our most challenging question, and I think it will become apparent why. Question 3. Based on the information provided in the passage, which of the following statements most accurately describes the relationship between cellular structures and their functions? The nuclear envelope's pores serve the same function as the Golgi apparatus in distributing cellular materials. So we know that nuclear pores regulate the passage of molecules between the nucleus and cytoplasm, and the Golgi apparatus modifies and packages newly created proteins for distribution throughout the cell or for secretion. These are different functions. So as you can see, we will have to compare the functions of the offered pairs. We can rule out A. How about B? Both mitochondria and the nucleus contain genetic material, but their DNA serves different cellular purposes. So within the nucleus, DNA is organized into chromosomes, which contain the instructions necessary for protein synthesis and cellular function. And mitochondria contain their own DNA, so that matches. But mitochondria generate most of the cell supply of adenosine triphosphate, the molecule that provides energy for cellular processes. So mitochondria do have their own DNA, and they use it to generate ATP. The nucleus also has DNA, but it's organized into chromosomes with the instructions necessary for protein synthesis. This answer looks pretty good, but let's look at the rest of them. So we'll leave this one. The SER and RER perform identical functions, but in different cellular locations. So the RER works in conjunction with the Golgi apparatus which modifies and packages newly created proteins for distribution. Meanwhile, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum specializes in lipid synthesis and detoxification of harmful substances. So it doesn't look like they perform identical functions, but in different cellular locations. They seem to perform two different functions. One helps with protein, the other specializes in lipid synthesis and detoxification. So we can rule out C. D. Ribosomes and mitochondria both produce essential molecules but require nuclear DNA to function. We know that the mitochondria have their own DNA. Ribosomes, let's see. The cell's protein manufacturing centers, called ribosomes, can be found both free-floating in the cytoplasm and attached to the rough endoplasmic reticulum. So this answer is not supported because the mitochondria don't require nuclear DNA. They have their own DNA, whereas the ribosomes do require nuclear DNA to get instructions necessary for protein synthesis. So we can rule this one out. Let's look at E. The Golgi apparatus and SER both modify cellular products but work with different types of molecules. So the Golgi apparatus modifies and packages newly created proteins, and the SCR specializes in lipid synthesis and detox. The passage doesn't offer enough support for this answer because, it doesn't necessarily say that they modify cellular products but work with different types of molecules. So this one isn't really fully supported, which leaves us with E. So with this one, because we have to check all of the answers, it requires a more holistic view of the passage. You can see that we had to go back and scan for several different things. And it requires testing every answer, whereas the previous two questions, you could more look at the passage and find the components and then just answer match from there. Though these questions can absolutely be answered by details included in the passage, that is no reason to underestimate them. They may be tricky if you don't take your time and use the tools at your disposal. With patience, they can be conquered as well as any other verbal questions. Good luck.